because 54% of the voters of Florida said their finances had improved over the last 4 years. So clearly, the improvement in the economy in Florida, the fact that they came there, those new residents looking for jobs, paid off big time for Al Gore.
And remember early tonight, one of the keys we asked is, was it the economy stupid? I think what you're telling us, I mean, you can speak for yourself, is that in Florida and Michigan,
yes,
those union members that had been lost to the Democratic Party all through the 80s and came back hoping that Clinton would make things better for them, it seems that it was the economy stupid or intelligent. But at any event, in both those states, the union members and people who thought their incomes were better went solidly for Gore, may help to make the difference.
Yeah. Observation about the Midwest, staying in the Midwest, Illinois, my home state. With the vice president taking Illinois, the simple headline is that the brothers Daley came through for Al Gore. William Daley, the vice president's national campaign manager, Richard M. Daley, the mayor of Chicago, they came through. There was some concern as recently as a month ago, but obviously the machine turned out.
And apparently all these voters were alive.
Yes,
that's right. It wasn't always the case in Chicago.
Well, usually from Chicago we vote early and often. But
if brothers Daley came through for Al Gore, the brother Bush did not come through for his brother, George W. Florida did not hold for his brother.
It's interesting, we talk about the unions, and you both have talked about the union vote. All this happening while union membership is declining in this country. So whatever the organized labor has to turn out in the United States these days, it has to work even harder. And because as a percentage of the workforce, organized labor is a smaller percentage than ever in history.
And that's why John Sweeney may be one of the people to whom Al Gore owes a great debt of gratitude. As was mentioned, he's the head of the AFL-CIO, committed to Gore when Bradley was still a threat last October, poured millions upon millions of dollars into mail voter turnout. And if Al Gore were to win tonight, that's a long way away, John Sweeney is someone who's going to be at that table in January.
Can you think of the agony and the anguish unfurling in the Bush camp and the Bush family? I can recall interviewing Prescott Bush, Jeb Bush's son, on Inside Politics, and I asked him, what happens? Yes, what happens if your dad does not deliver for your uncle? And he said, well, we've told him that we're going to read him out of the party. He said, that's a joke. And we had Governor Bush over the past couple days referring to my little brother, saying that he's assured me that when it's all said and done, we're going to win in Florida. But this is a deep embarrassment.
Well, I think the question we have to ask now, with Florida gone, we've given Florida to Gore, we've given Michigan to Gore, Illinois we knew was going to happen. What is it that the Texas governor needs to do to put a victory together? And I think it gets much more problematical for him now that we know the numbers or the states are falling the way they are. In fact, Jeff Greenfield, do some quick calculating. I mean, what would George W. Bush have to do now, assuming these calls stay as they are, to put 270 together?
Well, Pennsylvania looms very large as one of the big battleground states that he has a shot in. And then you have to go down the middle of the country and pick up Arkansas, pick up Tennessee, pick up Missouri, later pick up Wisconsin, try for something in the Pacific Northwest, because that 270 electoral vote
total
is
not out of the realm of possibility.
It is not out of the realm of possibility. It just gets tougher.
And Judy, let me add that the Nader factor could loom large here, because in some of those states that are left that Al Gore hopes to pick up, like Wisconsin and Minnesota and Oregon and Washington, the Nader vote could be absolutely crucial. If he takes enough Democrats away from Al Gore, they could go for Bush.
And while we talk about the presidency, the Senate is up for grabs, and we have some calls to make, if you want to call them calls. Some of these calls are telling you that they're not calls. In Michigan, where Spencer Abraham is battling Congresswoman Debbie Stabenow, we say that race is too close to call. In New Jersey, where John Corzine, the Goldman Sachs executive who dumped $60 million of his own money into this race against Congressman Bob Franks, we are saying at this moment that race is too close to call. Probably one of the most watched Senate races, Senator John Ashcroft running against Governor Mel Carnahan, who died a couple of weeks ago in his plane crash. In a plane crash, his widow, Jean, says she would take the seat if Mel Carnahan gets more votes. That one is too close to call. Now, we are calling Joe Lieberman the winner in Connecticut. But, of course, if Al Gore wins, Joe Lieberman will have to resign the Senate. But if not, he at least has a day job. Now, here is a pickup. In Delaware, Governor Thomas Carper has unseated Senator William Roth, a 30-year veteran of the United States Senate, chairman of the inevitably described powerful Senate Finance Committee. Age was a real issue in this race. Senator Roth had the misfortune to collapse while a TV camera was running. That is a pickup for the Democrats. Roth is out. One of the lions of the Senate gone.
All right, while we're looking at the Senate and some of these other very, very important elections taking place, let's go over to the man who's keeping a close eye on all this, our Wolf Blitzer. He's over there with Stu Rothenberg. Wolf?
Judy, with that pickup, that Democratic pickup in Delaware, the new balance of power in the Senate, let's take a look at where it stands right now. There were 35 Republican holdovers, 31 Democrats, 9 Republican winners tonight, 7 Democratic winners. That brings the new number now 44 in the Republican camp in the Senate. 38 Democrats will be in the Senate, at least 18 races still undecided. We have some other Senate races we're ready to call right now, all as predicted. Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison easily reelected in Texas. In Pennsylvania, Rick Santorum, the incumbent, easily reelected, defeating Ron Klink, the Democrat. In the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Senator Edward Kennedy easily defeats Jack E. Robinson as expected. In Tennessee, Bill Frist, Dr. Bill Frist, the incumbent, he is reelected in Tennessee. In Maryland, another easy race for Paul Sarbanes, the longtime incumbent, beating Paul Rappaport. In the state of Mississippi, the Senate Majority Leader Trent Lott, once again easily reelected. And in Maine, Senator Olympia Snowe, the Republican, moderate Republican, reelected once again. Stuart Rothenberg, there is a change, though, that we're seeing some changes in the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, we sure are, Wolf. Roth, as Jeff mentioned, a 5-term U.S. Senator, chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, a powerful political figure. Roth IRAs, many people know that, named after him. Tom Carper, however, was also a very established figure, is an established figure, much younger, 54 years old, was the at-large congressman, a state treasurer. Well-known figure. In fact, polls show that both men were highly regarded, but I have to mention, Wolf, that a year or two ago, there were a lot of Republican insiders who thought that maybe it'd be better if Senator Roth stepped aside. The Republicans nominated Mike Castle, the congressman, a former governor, that he would have a better chance of holding the seat. Roth didn't think so. They didn't.
All right, speaking of Delaware, we're ready to call the next governor of Delaware. Ruth Ann Minner, the Democrat, wins that open seat, defeating John Burris. And one important ballot initiative we're ready to call at this point right now. In Michigan, there was a very controversial voucher initiative that would have allowed vouchers, money, government money, to go to private parochial schools. That voucher initiative in Michigan, we're now saying will go down to defeat no vouchers in Michigan. Tell us why that's important.
Well, the vouchers would have given students about $3,100 under current figures for students in schools that had a low graduation rate. Senator John McCain actually cut a TV ad for the pro-voucher people. The Michigan Catholic Conference was supportive of the Michigan Chamber, but of course the Michigan Education Association was strongly opposed, spent a lot of money against it. And these voucher initiatives have very big problems when they get in front of the voters, and they seem to go down, and this one went down as well.
And there's another voucher initiative in California. We'll watch for that, but for now, back to Bernie on the National Desk.
Thanks very much. And quickly to Nashville, Tennessee, and Austin, Texas. In Austin, Candy Crowley covering the Bush headquarters there, and in Nashville, our man John King. As you know, the CNN Electoral College count stands at 121 for Governor Bush, 119 for Vice President Gore. John King, are things evolving the way your people there, you're covering, expected them?
Well, certainly the way they hoped, Bernie. They very much needed Florida, given Governor Bush's strength in places like West Virginia, Iowa, Wisconsin, traditionally Democratic states. So they very much needed Florida to offset that. We're told the vice president was having dinner with his wife and Senator Joe Lieberman and Hadassah Lieberman. When we called Florida and Michigan, we're told cheers went up throughout the room, some hugs and kisses around the room, then immediately back to work. Even at this hour, the vice president and Joe Lieberman still making telephone calls, we're told, into Missouri, into New Mexico, into Colorado. Also significantly, we should tell you, you were just discussing a few moments ago how indebted the vice president might be to organized labor if he pulls this off. The polls have closed in Ohio. I spoke moments ago to Steve Rosenthal, the national AFL-CIO political director. He said of phone banks in Cincinnati and in Cleveland, about 350 to 400 phones total. He says they have emailed them the lists of union members in New Mexico, Colorado, and Arizona. Those email lists get fed into the computers. The computers automatically begin dialing those union households, union workers in the Midwest, now trying to help the vice president throughout the mountain Southwest.
And Candy Crowley, to my original question, are things evolving tonight night the way folks in the Bush camp are expecting?
I think you've got to look at both Florida and at Michigan and know that this is a disappointment for them. But I will also tell you that they talk a lot about, the changing strategy over the years, that yes, Florida was always considered something a Republican had to win, but they say the demographics have changed, people have moved, the states are different. Thus you see George Bush's strength in West Virginia and Iowa and all those states that John just mentioned. Can they win this without Florida and Michigan, which, as you know, we both declared for Al Gore? Bush strategists say absolutely, but clearly this is not an easy thing to do, and the focus becomes on Pennsylvania, on Missouri, on Wisconsin, on Minnesota, and slowly what we're getting down to is some real must-wins for George Bush.
Is Governor Bush still having dinner with his parents and his brother, the Florida governor?
Governor Bush was at dinner for about an hour with his family. He was supposed to watch the returns from a local hotel here, but we're now told that the governor will instead watch them at the governor's mansion. Read into that what you want, just a change of plans here from the Four Seasons. Now he's going to watch the election returns at the governor's mansion.
Okay, thank you, Candy Crowley. John King. Outstanding reporting from John King on what the union AFL-CIO is doing with their union members in the Midwest, operating phone banks, calling union members in the Southwest to get out the vote.
Great story to be written after this election about just exactly what the unions did. I think some of us reporters were onto it, but it's a much bigger story, I think, than perhaps anyone had realized. Tiny little omen here tonight. Omens are probably made to be broken. No Republican has ever won the White House yet without winning the state of Illinois. We've already called Al Gore the winner in Illinois. Again, these things are made to be broken, but we just point that out. We're going to take a break. When we come back, much, much more of our election coverage. It's 8:20 in the eastern part of the United States. We've made some calls. We've got many more to make. Many states we cannot tell you about, but this is our first look at the actual vote count. These are real human beings who cast real ballots all over the country. Only 5% of the precincts reporting, and with that just 5%, you can see George Bush, 54% of the vote, 3.3 million. Al Gore, 45%, 2.7 million. I think we have to say it's a little too early to know whether that represents anything or not. This is the electoral vote that we can tell you at this hour based on the states that we've been able to call, based on our exit polling. And key precincts. Jeff Greenfield helpfully reminds me. George Bush has amassed 121 electoral votes. His states are in red. Al Gore, 119 electoral votes. His states in blue, including the important states we've been able to call in the last half hour of Florida and Michigan. But we are very much keeping an eye on the states in yellow. Those states are still being fought out. We are not able to tell you at this point whether they are Gore or Bush.
And one of the things we're going to be looking at as we go through the evening is the comparison between the popular vote total and the electoral map total. Judy, you're absolutely right, 5% of the vote, huge states left out. That doesn't tell you much. But we do keep reminding people, given the pre-election polls, of at least the possibility this time that one candidate could win the electoral vote and still lose the popular vote. That is a story we'll be following as the night wears on.
It's happened 3 times in the history of the United States.
Yep.
And
but never in the 20th century.
Never in the always
and never
19th century.
And never when we had such a democratic feeling. I mean, it happened at a time when we didn't elect our senators, when women couldn't vote, when blacks in much of the country couldn't vote. But we're not saying this is going to happen by a long shot. We're just saying we're keeping our eye on it.
All right, Jeff Greenfield. Now, what do I do next? Madeline and McCurry, it's my fault. I'm listening too hard to Jeff Greenfield here. Mary Madeline, Mike McCurry, there's a lot to talk to you two about. A number of states have been called, and there are a number of states still out there. Mike McCurry, what do you make of the numbers so far?
Well, I think the numbers are showing what I think we know all along. It's a very, very close election, and it's going to be a long evening. I think the results in Florida have got to be bittersweet for the Bush family. Of course, the brother of Governor Bush, the sitting governor in Florida, that can't be a happy one for the Bush family. But you know, let's credit Senator Lieberman, running for vice president, who practically parked in Florida, worked very, very hard there. And I think we'll also see, as we get into behind the scenes of these numbers, that the argument that Al Gore made about Social Security and the future of that program really did have some real merit to the voters of Florida. So I think that's very significant. We'll have to see if that stands up as we move west.
Mary, Florida does, as Mike said, have to be a disappointment for the Bush campaign.
Well, I am going to go out on a limb here. We have early data. The spread is 2%. The raw total is 4,000 votes at this point. If it continues at this pace, there are 500,000 absentee ballots out there. I'm just telling you, this reminds me of Duke Machen in California, lost on Tuesday, won on Thursday. I continue.
What are you suggesting, Mary?
I'm suggesting when the real count isn't in, the absentee ballots are counted, that they are extensive in there, and that state's going to flip. I really feel that way. Now, having said that, there was a strategy to lose Florida and Michigan and carry on and still get to 270 with some of the states that haven't been called yet, but look to be leaning in Bush's direction. But I still feel like that absentee ballot operation there was so extraordinary, and it is documented at 500,000 that it more than covers the spread as it exists right now.
Mike, is that a plausible scenario?
Not a likely scenario. Sounds like a little bit of wishful thinking, but I can understand with the numbers that close how Republicans might still want to think that there's a chance there. But you know, there is something very important. The closeness of these numbers so far, and as we are reporting it and talking about it and reflecting on it, is surely driving up turnout in the West, because people out West who in past elections have been told that their votes aren't going to count are suddenly realizing that there are very large stakes here. It's a very close election, and nobody is running away with it. This may have a real significant impact on turnout out in the Pacific Northwest especially.
Mary, what about the state of Michigan? Clearly, George W. Bush put in, you know, a really strong effort there. I mean, he was in and out of that state a number of times. He certainly fought hard there in the primary, lost that, but there was reason to believe he had a good shot at Michigan.
Well, it was a battleground state. You couldn't just give it up. We have a Republican governor there who worked hard. There are a lot of other things going on in that state, not the least of which was the voucher initiative, which the governor feared would be detrimental to Governor Bush's race there. And you had the heavy union effort. So you couldn't just give it up. But of those big three, it was the one least expected to end up in Bush's column.
All right, Mary Madeline, Mike McCurry, we're going to come back to both of you for some time, and throughout this night, I want to.
I have one quick point. The UAW got Election Day off as part of its contract for the first time in its history, and I think when people look at Michigan and that union vote that Bill has told us about, once again, John Sweeney, once again, vote poll, Election Day off as a paid holiday. That may have turned Michigan around.
I just want to remind our viewers very quickly the states that we have said where the polls have closed, but still we are not able to call a winner. Ohio, West Virginia, Alabama, Maine, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee. And I'm just told that I've just been made a liar. We are able to call the state of Alabama for Texas Governor George W. Bush. Governor Bush takes the 9 electoral votes in the state of Alabama, also known as the Heart of Dixie.
Also, CNN is calling the Senate race in New Jersey. Millionaire, multi-millionaire John Corzine, who spent more than $60 million, has won the open seat, turning back the challenge by Republican Bob Franks. Corzine, a big winner in New Jersey, having spent lots of money in the process.
That's a hold.
I was going to say, it goes to show that for $55 or $60 million, you can buy your way into the United States Senate.
Well, in fact, it's most important in terms of the balance of power. That's Frank Lautenberg's seat, so we count that as a hold for the Democrats. But unlike Al Chucky in California or Michael Huffington in California, this enormous record-busting sum literally paid off.
Back to the race for the White House. If you're just joining our coverage, this is the electoral vote count right now. It's this close. That's right. These figures are correct. Governor Bush with 130 votes. Vice President Al Gore with 119. Bill Schneider, you wanted to make a point about this yellow map, or states here on the map that are yellow. It doesn't necessarily mean what?
It doesn't necessarily mean that those states are very close. It means that we're not ready to call them yet, because in some cases there are unprecedented numbers of absentee ballots. For instance, in North Carolina 4 years ago, 60,000 ballots were cast by absentee. This year, 500,000 were counted absentee. So in many of those cases where the state is yellow, it just means we're not ready to call them yet.
In fact, Mary Madeline was even saying in the state of Florida, even though CNN has called the state of Florida for Al Gore, Mary was making the point that there are something like, I think she said, 500,000 absentee ballots that have
Well, when we do call the state, we've taken the absentee ballot count into account. When we call the state, we're pretty sure that state is going to go for the winner. It's just that when we have a state in yellow, that means we're not ready to call it yet. It doesn't necessarily mean that state is neck and neck.